Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the April 8th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. We are calling the meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, a reading of the meeting notice. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Verona Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published in the Star Ledger, posted with the Township of Verona and the Verona Education Association. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public via the Board of Education website. Mr. Cruz, could you please call attendance?
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mrs. Farrar, for the record, Ms. Farrar is absent. Mrs. Prisco,
Here.
Mrs. Frizella,
Here.
Mr. Boone.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to routine matters first. If I can have a motion to approve the minutes of the confidential and regular session meeting of March 25th, 2025.
So moved.
And
second.
I'm not done.
Oh.
And the special joint
Oh.
session with the Township of Verona also on March 25th, 2025.
I will do that again.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Walker.
will second both
Seconded
of
by
those.
Ms. Prisco. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
thank you. I think we should maybe start with the presentation. Sure. That way you don't have to stick around. So if everyone will let me take it out of order, we can have our presentation of our annual Code of Ethics training by the New Jersey School Board Association, Ms. Jean Cleary. Thank you.
Hi, it's nice to be with you. So I think, yeah. We just need one moment. Thank you. Now you can see it. Okay, so thank you for having me out to be with you again. It's good to see everybody on this cold and very windy day. We are going to look at the rules for 2025. Presentation off. Is that all right? I have to start the presentation off just to inform you as well as the public that this is meant for training and information purposes and not as legal advice. Your legal counsel should be consulted for anything that you have questions on in regard to ethics to protect yourself and the board. So the School Ethics Act was created in recognition of the need to have essentially that to hold the respect and confidence of the people so that boards of education and local administrators always act in a way that maintains the public trust so that you can be focused on the important work that you do on behalf of students and student achievement. So because of that, board members and local administrators must refrain from any actions that would call into question your ability to serve and or leave the any member of the community with the reasonable impression that their trust is being broken. So the legislative intent is really to ensure and preserve public confidence in school officials, which you are school officials as board members and local administrators. To guide your conduct, they recognize that you should have the benefit of some standards and also the disciplinary mechanism in place to ensure that those standards are upheld and met. So these are considered to be a minimal set of ethical standards, and we always, of course, hold ourselves high to higher standards and accountability. But we are going to look at the Code of Ethics this evening. So towards accountability for the public's information, board members and local administrators must be in compliance with these items. All 4 of these pertain to board members, and local administrators have to be compliant with prohibited acts and filing of disclosure statements. The School Ethics Commission is the entity that is recognized as enforcing the act. It's made up of 9 members appointed by the governor. No more than 5 can be from one political party. And it's constituted with 5 non-school officials, 2 school board members, and 2 school administrators. However, currently, both positions for school board members and one for the administrators has been open for a bit of time. So right now, the School Ethics Commission is operating with 6 members. So we'll look at each of those components that you must be in compliance with. So both board members and lead administrators must file financial and personal relative disclosure statements. If you're a new board member or a new administrator, you have to complete those within 30 days of hire or when you come onto the board. And each of you is required to file them annually by April 30th. So even if your board secretary, BA, sends out a reminder, which some do, that's lovely, but you have to recognize that you all have to hold yourselves accountable for that. It's your individual responsibility to make sure you're in compliance, and failure to be in compliance can lead to penalty through the School Ethics Commission. So board members are, pardon me, board members are required to have mandatory training for every year of service. And New Jersey School Boards Association is recognized as the provider of that mandatory training. So in the first 90 days, and I recently heard that there are some districts that are saying they're not aware that for new board members, it's 90 days. I know you all know that here, but in the first 90 days, governance 1 must be completed. This is important for also your public to be aware of the training that you do receive to set you on a path so that you can serve well the students of the district. Governance 1 covers basic knowledge and skills, goes into discussion of NJQSAC, especially the governmental side that you have direct responsibility for, HIB. It provides the superintendent evaluation training, which is required for all board members to have, because that's a large responsibility for board members. Discussion of open public meetings, and of course, the Code of Ethics, which we're here to talk about tonight. Governance 2, by the end of the 2nd year, goes into finance and policy. Governance 3, by the end of the 3rd year, is student achievement and labor. And by the end of every year following either re-election or reappointment, you must take governance 4 to get the most recent legal updates that will inform your practice and decision making. New Jersey School Boards recognizes that everyone has very busy schedules, and so we provide it in different formats. We provide it in person, live, virtual, and self-paced. Board members should look at the New Jersey School Board's website to see which training best suits your needs, and then coordinate through the business administrator to register you, because it's required that that person does that. So the School Ethics Commission offers advisory opinions that can be provided to you if you should have a question about a future action and if that future action may be a violation or cause a violation. On the bottom of this. I think it's the next slide. I'm sorry. Any school official or the attorney on your behalf can pose that question. And if 6 members, which there are only 6 at this moment, of the commission feel that the question that you pose and the answer that's been provided has value to other board members throughout the state, they can be made public. And that provides us with a library that we can look at for our own guidance. And if that should happen, any identifying information about you or your district is removed. The purpose of it is just to provide education. So if you do pose an advisory, request an advisory opinion, it's similar to a police officer who is empowered to provide that guidance that you are then required to be compliant with. Failure to do so can lead to penalty, and it would constitute a violation of the School Ethics Act. And on the bottom of this slide, I think this was shared with you all, so you have it electronically, I hope. These are hyperlinks that'll bring you to the advisory opinion. So if you do have a question, you can look at that first before you pose a new one. So if we look here at the advisory opinions, I'm sure you all know this at this point, but the hyperlink on the side, A1424, just means advisory opinion, the number of the advisory opinion, and the year. These are really just summaries. So if you click on that, it'll bring you to the case, which has a lot more detail to it. I'm not going to read through all of these. They're available to you. These were the ones that were most recently provided from 2024. So the second one down, A1324, asks the question, can a board member participate in negotiations if they have an aunt employed in the district who is not a member of the local union? And the SEC's response was, even though the aunt is not a member of the union, very often administrator contracts are based on the agreements with the union. So because of that, a board member could not participate in any negotiations with a family member who is working for the district. On the bottom, A0724 poses the question, can a board member who co-owns a business, an ice cream shop in this case, participate in fundraising requests to support the PTO and clubs through hosting events and advertising? And the intent here might be, as a board member and a community person wanting to support the clubs, could all be good intention. But the School Ethics Commission says that services provided to the PTO or PTA, district families, district organizations, those would violate the act. And advertising solicitations open to the public at large and all businesses wouldn't pose a problem. But as a board member, the School Ethics Act exists to ensure that there's no confusion in the public so that you always retain the public's confidence and you're seen as being objective and not having any other business before the board. So on the next slide, we can look the second one down is, can a board member who received and used an endorsement from the local union or campaign material participate in policy matters relevant to union members? So these are aspects of the case. Considering the type and level of union support provided and absent any financial contribution, it's not necessarily a conflict. In this case, the board member did recognize that they should avoid participating in negotiations, however, in that first year, because that would lead a reasonable member of the public to question objectivity. So looking at the ethics complaint, any person may file an ethics complaint. And to do so, they must make sure that it happens within a 180-day window of the alleged violation. They have to identify the section of the act that they believe was violated, and they have to provide the factual evidence to support that claim. The SEC considers whether the facts provided would lead a reasonable person to believe the act has been violated. That's the standard that they use. So If there had been a violation determined happened, there are 4 levels of penalty or sanction that could be imposed. The School Ethics Commission recommends those penalties based on the specifics of that case, and then the commissioner is the one that has to act upon it following that recommendation. The first one is a reprimand, which would be a rebuke, recognizing that there was conduct that violated the standard, but it doesn't result in any formal resolution. The next more serious finding would be for censure, which is a formal disapproval by the commissioner, and it would be publicized through the adoption of a resolution. So that becomes a much more public thing where that is named. A suspension can bar either a board member or a staff member from engaging in activities and matters for a designated period of time, 30, 60, 90 days. And finally, a removal for egregious acts would lead to immediate termination from the board or, your employment being pulled if you're an administrator. So on the next slides, A through J, we're going to just take a look at the different parts of the Code of Ethics. And I just want to point out, I know that most of you have gone through these time and time again, but yet we do find ourselves with boards, with experienced board members, finding themselves in violations. So it's important, especially with perhaps the environment that we find ourselves in, and the discussion and the level of discussion that happens in communities at times, to just remind ourselves and have a refresher so that we can always work together to stay focused on what we're all really here to do, which is focus on students and student achievement. So I just point out on the first one, each one of these slides will have on the bottom standards, and those standards outline the factual evidence that would have to be provided if you're making a claim that there's been a violation of this part of the act. So the first one is that you as board members will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall only be brought about through legal and ethical procedures. So clearly, you are a policy-making body. You have policies that guide and bylaws that guide your behavior and how you present things. When you are going to make additions or amendments to your policies, you put them in a public setting at your board meeting so that the public can be aware of them. Those that will be affected by any rule changes can speak out at public comments. I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children, and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. This seems pretty straightforward, but we have so many things that distract us from focusing on children at times and what is best for students. So that really is the first thing that we have to always be asking ourselves: is this conversation, is this work that we're doing serving our students, right? Even tonight. The next one, C, is I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. So we spoke about this a moment ago. It's also important to recognize, as I know all of you do, that board members act as a board and not as individual board members. So the authority rests with the full board and not with individual board members. D is I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with fellow board members, see that they are well run. Again, pointing out, right, that we don't act as individuals when we're on a board. We act with fellow board members to make plans, appraise, set policy, do that work together to serve students. E, I will recognize that the authority rests with the Board of Education and make no personal promises or take any private action that may compromise the board. In future slides, we're going to look at some things, and this can even come into play, and we'll see it when we're looking at volunteering, right? So it doesn't have to be something that is obviously a conflict. It might be a behavior that might have unintended consequences that could complicate how a reasonable member of the public sees you and whether or not you're acting within your authority. F, I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. You do have to file those disclosure forms that list your family, immediate family members and family members, your financial statements to ensure that you're always focused on students and nothing else would compromise your objectivity. I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools, which if disclosed would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its schools. There's really so much contained in this one. Confidentiality, we recognize that board members are committed to keeping their public informed, as they should, and being transparent. You hold your meetings, of course, in public to conduct business meetings in public, but not with the public. But with that being said, there are times when it really is in the public interest to retain certain things as confidential. And that could even be work that's being done in committee that isn't ready to be presented to the public, which could lead to confusion and misunderstanding. So, you know, there's a process of how that happens and how that can be shared so that the public maintains an understanding and a trust for the work that you're doing. And also that you're, when you are prepared to share that information and it no longer needs to be confidential, that you're sharing it appropriately with the community and doing so with your fellow board members. And of course, you as a board identify for the staff through the way you communicate, through your policies, and other ways where you work with them to develop goals and identify those aspirations that you hold for your students. H, I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer. So it's the role and responsibility of the superintendent to make the recommendation for who she feels is the best qualified person for the role that makes the best match, that will best serve students, and puts that person in front of the board for approval. The board, according to what bylaws or policies you have in place, may have the right to see certain information about a new hire, for instance, but should never find themselves in a position where the board or any board member is trying to suggest someone for hire, right? That's an administrative role and has to be done by the superintendent. I will support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. We come on boards and we don't lose our own individuality and personal feelings about certain things. But we've had some cases where there might be for the community or even a board member who might have an objection to something that's being taught in a classroom. But we have to remember that the curriculum has to be meeting standards, the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. And while there may be room for discussion, for understanding of how things are delivered, that when staff is appropriately performing their duties, they must be supported in that. And J, I will refer all complaints to the Chief Administrative Officer and will act on those complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution. This one rings true from the day that you get on the board as a board member. People from the community will approach you as individuals to seek your guidance and support in getting issues resolved for them. They see that you have a role of authority, and we recognize that as board members, you know, we serve, right? And we want to be thoughtful to the people in our community, but the appropriate thing to do, as we know, is to direct people to the chain of command, so that an administrative solution closest to the issue can be found that ensures equity so that similar situations can be solved perhaps using the same solution. It provides for administrative learning, efficiency, and growth and support. But also we recognize that at times you may have to state to a member of the public who approaches you looking for support that you are actually prevented from helping them with their concern outside of putting them back to the chain of command, and then always letting your superintendent know that you've done that so that she can be prepared as the person in charge of the district and work with her staff as she sees fit. It's also important to recognize that if you do use statements such as, I'll look into it for you, let me see what I can do, you're right away acting outside of your role. And also, if there's a failure of an acceptable administrative solution to that problem, and that issue does come before the full board for resolution, you may have to recuse yourself because now it could be claimed that you are not objective. You've already participated in some discussions. So just for your information. So when we look at cases related to the Code of Ethics, these cases were determined in 2024. Unlike advisory opinions, if you look at the codes on them, you'll see the year 23, 22, they go back a little bit because cases sometimes have a long tail until they're fully resolved. On this slide, the one on the bottom, C2422, was a case where a member was involved in ongoing efforts to reverse an HIB and code of conduct violation for her child. She made contact with the superintendent, with the board, spoke about it with the board as a whole, approached individual board members, and then spoke to board counsel to look for support of overturning the findings, right? It was determined to be a violation. And as we see on the bottom, right next to where it says reprimand, it actually gives you C, D, and E, the parts of the Code of Ethics that were violated. So that's a good way to understand it. You can hit the hyperlink to read more details about it. But of course, it served in trying to influence board members to overturn the superintendent's authority and decision in the case. And it was for personal reasons, right? It was because of her child that wasn't board business. So it presented a problem by using the board attorney for advice, because that was a benefit that members of the public wouldn't have legal advice, right? For something that was not board business. So C7823, I like to choose this one as an example because it starts off with a 15+ year board member, right? Just proving the point that anyone is capable of bad actions. Even that board member sat through probably 15 ethics trainings. But this board member took inappropriate action that was considered beyond the role of a board member. They usurped the authority of the superintendent, who had suggested disciplinary recommendation for a staff member. This board member went to that staff member's home, picked up a letter, pleaded the case for that person to individual board members, went to the BA, gave them a letter, instructed them not to share it with the superintendent. Clearly went on to discuss the case, failed to recuse themselves when board discussion was being held, right? So I think we're almost at hitting every single part of the Code of Ethics as a violation on this one. And it led to a recommended suspension. And it says recommended suspension for 60 days. Recommended will be taken away when the commissioner does finally act, but there's a little bit of a lag time there. So one of the things that board members have to be aware of, right, is the reason, as we were saying, behind the School Ethics Act is to maintain the trust of the public in school officials that are serving for the interests of students. So recusal is a way to formally recognize that you may have a conflict that would prevent you from being able to participate in both discussions of an issue and the vote. So sometimes people think they only have to abstain, recuse themselves for the vote and can participate in discussions, but that's in fact not true. So we're going to look at conflict in a moment, but if you have a conflict, you need to memorialize that in the minutes of the meeting by stating that you have to recuse yourself. That's a way to protect yourself and the board and hold the public trust in the fact that you've taken appropriate action to not participate because you're fully aware that there's a conflict, and those can happen. Abstention is not the correct way to do that because it's not as formal. So reasons for abstention may be that you, and I know this never happens to you, but maybe didn't get a chance to fully read through your packet. And so there's board vote and you just don't feel that it's proper for you to participate in it because you're not prepared, or you can't participate in the discussion because you're not sure of the facts. So you may abstain, but for recognized conflict, you really have to recuse yourself, and the board attorney can guide you on any impact that it might have on the quorum or the vote. So prohibited acts for both board members and administrators are, this is clearly just an excerpt. The hyperlink is there that'll take you to it. When we talk about recusing yourself if you have a conflict, these are the things that may cause that conflict where you have a benefit to you as a school official or your immediate family. And it outlines here, due to a business interest or a professional activity that could be seen in conflict, use of a position to secure unwarranted privileges, advantages, or employment. So the case where I just spoke about, where the board member used the board attorney inappropriately for legal advice for a personal matter, that would be an unwarranted privilege. Financial involvement that may impair objectivity, service or employment that may prejudice independent judgment, gifts, favors offered with intent to influence. So very simply, it's a matter of degree as well. So if everybody gets a cup of coffee and not just you, that's probably okay. But if you alone are getting taken out to lunch to discuss business, then that goes into a different place, right? So we have to be aware of that. And of course, financial gain. So remembering always that it's not whether you believe that you can be objective, it's what a reasonable member of the public would believe about your ability to be objective. So if you have any questions, that really should be directed to the board attorney to guide you. So we've been talking about if you're receiving any benefit, and benefit is actually defined for us here. So the ethics regulation defines benefit as a direct or indirect advantage, profit, privilege, or gain, whether personal, financial, or otherwise. And as soon as you see that last part about or otherwise, we recognize that that's going to capture a broader range of things. So we have to be careful, always remembering that it's the perception of the public that's important, and not whether we had an intent or we thought that we could remain objective. There's a case here on the bottom where an acting superintendent had put forth the names. There were 160 individual names on a list for substitutes, and she recommended that the board approve these. Well, her son's name was on the list, and when that was noted, it was, of course, seen as a benefit to a family member. It led to a reprimand, and sometimes we can look at these slides and question, maybe it should have been more than that, but there were mitigating factors that were taken into consideration, but it was a reprimand that should not have happened, right? So when we look at conflict and benefit cases, the first one that we have here is, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to go on to, The first one we have is a member, a board member is the president of the PSA, Parent Staff Association, and owns a spirit wear company. And they wanted to donate merchandise to sell as a fundraiser through the company's website, using the principle to promote it to families to drive business to the website for this fundraiser. And it is found to be a conflict, right, for many reasons, because it could impact for that staff member, that principal could feel that, you know, they have to participate or get families to participate, and then their contract is coming up for renewal in front of that board, and that board member has that company. The board member would be receiving perhaps financial gain, but also goodwill that wouldn't be afforded to other businesses in the community. So it's clearly a conflict, and under the heading of having no other business before the board except that which affects the students of the district. So on this slide, we have relationship definitions. Immediate family member goes a little bit deeper into who can be considered a relative. And there are things about other, you know, someone that may not appear here in certain circumstances, maybe even considered a relative. So the term relative doesn't really appear in prohibited acts or code of ethics, but it can cause a conflict. So these cases are decided on the specifics and the impact that they have individually. So things to know as a board member to avoid any violation is that you may not hire the relative of a board member or of the superintendent. But if a relative already works in the district, that administrator may not exercise direct or indirect authority over the relative. A board member may not take part in employment matters concerning the superintendent or any supervisors in the chain of command between the relative and the superintendent. These can have really far-reaching impacts to the functioning of a board. So this is why we have to really take a moment to consider this. A board member also may not take part in the search, selection, or vote to hire a new superintendent or any post-hire evaluations or contract discussions. So as you know, one of the major roles of a Board of Education is to do the annual evaluation of the superintendent. So of course, that board member would not be able to participate if they have a family member working in the district. On this grid, we just have for collective bargaining a reference, and it just tells you whether or not you may participate in negotiations or in the vote to ratify, depending on involvement in union activity or close relatives involvement. So here, just going back to campaigns and collective bargaining, board members who receive union endorsements may be seen as conflicted from collective bargaining in that first year. So if you receive an endorsement, you should avoid negotiations in that first year. However, endorsements from the local, state, or national units doesn't necessarily create a conflict. Unless there is a financial contribution given with the intent to influence. So for board members, we just have some cases here just to be aware of. So talking about your relative working in the district, the first one is a board president. We recognize that the board president is empowered with appointing people on the board to committees and attending committee meetings, usually when it doesn't involve a quorum. And also putting the committee chairperson in place, right? But this board member had a child who was an instructional assistant, and the advice that was given through the advisory opinion was that the president could not direct anyone to committee, could not select the chair of that committee, could not attend any committees that would discuss anything remotely related to their child's employment, including but not limited to personnel negotiations, instructional, and finance committees. So there are very few probably left. Another one, very similar, a spouse works in the district, and being thoughtful about the same thing, that board member could not participate in those committees that could possibly touch upon any issue related to the employment of their spouse. So when penalties have been found, board members may seek to use the advice of counsel. I went to my board attorney, and my board attorney said this was fine, and now I'm being told that I have sanction against me. Advice of counsel does not remove a penalty, but it can mitigate that if the following 4 things are all present. You had to ask for the advice of counsel and get approval and advice prior to your taking any action. You had to, the person who offered that advice to you was the person that held the authority to do so. So that would be your board attorney, but not your friend or neighbor who's an attorney. All pertinent facts and circumstances were revealed to the attorney so that their guidance was on all of the information they needed to have to give you the correct guidance, and that you complied with all parts of the advice given. So if you were told to do or not do 2 or 3 things, you can't select which ones you want to follow. You have to be in full compliance with all the recommendations of counsel. If those 4 factors are present, you may be able to mitigate a penalty from one level to another, but it is very case and fact specific, really with the focus on maintaining the public trust and how it will be interpreted, what impact it has. So volunteering at school. So volunteering, we recognize that board members are the ultimate volunteers. What you're doing is a huge labor of love through your volunteering. So you're often also with a history of other things that you may have been volunteering in. So the School Ethics Commission isn't saying that you can't be a volunteer. What they really look at is your level of involvement and your level of authority. So these are things to be really clear on to prevent any confusion. So your involvement with staff and students, the frequency and level of interaction that you have with them, and they look at the authority to give and receive directions or to direct resources or funds. So there's a difference between doing the work of a committee, but not being the treasurer of that organization, right? So the first one is if you're having an active presence in the schools with heightened involvement in school-sponsored events, with regular contact with students or staff, perhaps directing someone, maybe asking the custodian to do the setup and breakdown for the event, right? You're appearing to be in charge of other of staff. That really would be looked at as a possible violation under C, where you're really supposed to be confining your focus to board action, which is policy making, planning, and appraisal. If you are giving and receiving directions or orders from staff and becoming directly involved in those functions that are seen as the responsibility normally of school personnel, you may be in violation of D, which is being seen as administering the schools, right? So if you're spending an awful lot of time in school buildings or offices, that's a concern because other people in the public could think, first of all, you're getting more access than another member of the public would have, and that you could be seen as being a little too close to administration, right? We need that separation and that balance. And finally, nor take any private action that may compromise the board. So if you are regularly working with staff and we want to have good relationships with everyone, right? But if you're regularly working in close contact with students and staff and perhaps developing like collegial relationships with staff, you have to consider that part of your responsibility may be to make decisions that affect their livelihood, right? And would a member of the public believe that you can now maintain objectivity that's necessary as a board member in making those decisions? So the SEC, through prior advisory opinions, has given us some guidance on volunteering. So if you're assisting your spouse who is running a theater program and you're at the rehearsals and you're having regular contact with students and staff, it's easy to argue and see that is going to be an inherent violation. leader of a student club. You might have participated in something or volunteered as assistant football coach, regular contact with students and staff. Those are going to have inherent violations. Things that may not, and this is one that we get kind of regularly, is about PTA, PTO leadership. Sometimes people have been doing that before they come onto the board. It's not necessarily an inherent violation, but you really should get some guidance from the board attorney because it's a bit of a gray area. If you're doing work that just is at an executive level, not really being in the schools, not having that contact, just putting the plans together, it may be appropriate. But it's, again, a matter of degree. And as board members, one-off type things, you perhaps participate and read across America, and then maybe later in the year chaperone a trip, that would be okay. But the if you're doing it every week or you're in the classrooms regularly, then that's a different level. And of course, we know best practice, we can't say this enough, is always to keep your superintendent informed when you're going to be in school buildings. That helps her be aware and there are no surprises, and helps her answer if any staff members or members of the public have questions about why you were there. Could be totally appropriate. You might be there as a parent for your child, but it's helpful if she knows that in advance. Social media. When a board member makes a statement, the SEC considers the content, substance, and context of the statement to determine if a reasonable person would believe the statement was made in your official capacity. So members of the public don't always have the same level of understanding that you have because of amount of training that you undertake on a regular basis, understanding your roles and responsibilities. So it's how it appears to a reasonable member of the public. So there was a situation where a member discussed without a disclaimer about a policy and went into talking about how it was reviewed by board counsel and opposed by 4 board members, and that was out on social media. That's board business, and it's being discussed out there, and it would be reasonable for a member of the public to believe that that person was speaking in an official capacity and sharing information about board business in an official capacity, and that was a problem. In another situation, a board member just posted, there was an upcoming election, posted 3 pictures of the 3 candidates, didn't even support one or the other, and that would be hard to argue that that was outside of, that was pretty much a personal page and really seemed to have a nexus with their board responsibility. So the social media disclaimer is suggested by the SEC, and they do actually recommend it in bold and italics and containing all parts of it. So the first part of it goes on to say that it's a statement that you are speaking as an individual, not as a member of the board. But the second part of it is also incredibly important to ensure that you're not leaving a member of the public with thinking that other members of the board are holding the same view as you. Right. So it's important to go on that these statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my personal opinion. Now, of course, disclaimers can help to, clarify for the public what's happening, but you really have to understand that it's case specific, and the content and the context is going to really matter. So you're not automatically in violation if you don't use a disclaimer, but you could be in violation by using it if the content and context would confuse members of the public. You don't have to use the exact wording that was provided here, but again, they did recommend it. They are the ones that will decide whether there's a violation, and they did put it in bold and italics. So I would suggest that if you are finding the need to make any statements on social media, that you use it as offered. So general guidance for social media is that if someone is newly elected that was using media in their candidacy, they stop immediately using those things, because before they were a board member, they weren't held to the code of ethics and were free to say anything they wanted. But now, as a board member, they wouldn't be, right? Now they have to be in compliance with the code of ethics. Any social media account that you may have, even if you look at it as personal, if it identifies you as a board member, can create concerns because you're stating that you are a board member, even if it's your what you consider social media account. Just liking or sharing something that's not really connected to board business is probably low risk of being a violation. But one of the things that they're really cautioning board members about is refraining from participating as an administrator on any social media pages, because anything you allow to be posted to that site or don't allow to be posted to that site could be seen as a statement of your support for that or lack of support for that topic. So that can confuse members of the public and can lead to unintended problems. So we made it. So I really do want to say thank you so much. I know that you are an experienced board and you've heard this before, but it's always great to revisit it because the work you're doing is so important. We need no distractions. We want to stay focused for the students of Verona, which you are serving very well. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And of course, I always say, if any of you have any questions regarding this or anything else, or you need any support or resources, please just contact me and I'll be happy to get you what you need.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. So moving, anyone have any questions before? It's clearly, okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, if we can have our superintendent report, please, Ms. Giuseppe.
Sure, and I'll keep it fairly short, just a kind of an update. So the 23-24 school performance reports were just released on March 31st. They've been embargoed and we've been taking a look at them. I'm going to do a full review at our next meeting because it's a lot. The categories in that report are demographics, academic achievement in ELA, math, and science. And this is information from the NJSLA and the dynamic learning maps, as well as access for Ls and the New Jersey graduation proficiency assessment. That's high school only. It also looks at growth based on ELA and math and JSLA scores in grades 4 through 8 in ELA and 4 through 7 in math. And that looks at student growth over subsequent years. It looks at college and career readiness, and there's a wide variety of what they consider college and career ready compared from the elementary to the middle to the high school level. Everything from computer science, participation in computer science courses and visual and performing arts. And we had an issue that we have to fix. We need to put our elementary school courses into Genesis. We got 0 on performing arts participation in the elementary schools because it wasn't put into Genesis. And they don't generally pull from Genesis. We can add it into a spreadsheet, which was this year they pulled directly from Genesis. So going forward, the county office did ask me about it. I did explain to them that it was a coding error, that we do have visual and performing arts for 100% of our kids in the elementary schools. At the middle school, takes those 2 categories and adds in participation in Algebra 1 and geometry and participation in world languages. At the high school level, it includes a significant amount, such as participation in career and technical education courses, advanced placement, seal of biliteracy, and a host of other course participation. It looks at climate and environment, which is broken into chronic absenteeism, discipline data, including HIB, the school day, and device data, how many devices we provide for students. There's a section on staff, which is staff experience, advanced degrees, staff to student ratios, 1-year retentions, and staff demographics, per pupil expenditures, and the source by which we receive those monies, and accountability. And this is both Elementary and Secondary Education Act accountability and percentile calculations, which is a comparison out to the rest of the state based on grade band schools. So I'll give a breakdown at our next meeting of how we've grown over the past 2 years. And just really quickly, I can't believe we're saying as we have a push to the end of the school year, we're in that end of school year movement. We are entering the standardized test phase. Right now, we're just finishing up the Access for Ls 2.0. And for that is, we're in makeups right now for our multilingual learners. This assessment is developed by World Class Instructional Design and Assessment, or WIDA, and it's a consortium of state and territories focused on supporting the academic success of our multilingual learners through standards assessment and professional learning. What it aims to do is provide parents of students that are multilingual learners with how much academic advancement they've made in English as measured by the ability to listen, speak, read, and write English each year. Dynamic learning maps, which is really for a very tiny percentage of our students. It's really a system of alternative assessments in math, language, arts, and science. Excuse me, of our most cognitively impaired students. Most of the students that are involved in taking the DLM are in our out-of-district placements, but we do have students in district that also sit for that test. The advanced placement 2-week marathon is coming up May 5th through 9th, and then again, May 12th through 16th. And the makeups follow that last week of testing. And then we enter into the NJSLA, ELA in grades 3 to 9, math grade 3 to 9, and science grades 5, 8, and 11. And those dates are HBW will start in the week of May 5th. The elementary school is the week of May 12th. And a high school the week of May 19th. Then we have the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment Summer Administration, July 21st to 25th. So it is a race to the end of the year and how much testing we can get in. And we also have map testing in there as well. Map testing was moved. They wanted to do it earlier this year, the curriculum department, and some of our principals asked if they could move that until after, and some of our teachers asked if we could move that till after and JSLA to provide more prep time, and Dr. Miller did make that change. So given our long presentation with school boards, I'm going to end my report with that. Thank you.
I do have one quick question. And I'm sorry, I hate to make you talking because it
okay.
hurts me to hear you talk.
It doesn't hurt me. It's just, it sounds bad.
I've been asked by a few HBW parents, or this was mentioned. When is the meeting that they're having a presentation on the new schedules?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? Let me, it should be coming up because the teachers were just informed as to who's teaching what yesterday. So I think they wanted to get that rounded up. I'll get the date for you. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Sure, thank you.
Would you like a Hall's cherry throat drop?
Thank you.
I
It's
think
not
we
going to
need
help.
have a vote on that
Thank
as
you
well.
anyway. I've been sucking on Ricola all day. It doesn't do anything. Thank you, though.
Thank you very much. And moving on to our student report, Ryan, favorite part.
Okay. Oh, good evening. So today is April 8th, and like Ms. Di Giuseppe said, it is scarily close to the end of the year. So we're actually entering the fourth quarter as of tomorrow, and I think there's, well, as always, lots of stuff going on. And some up in athletics, the baseball team improved their winning streak to 5-0 with a win over Behringer yesterday. Also, softball defeating New York Academy yesterday as well. And yesterday again, girls lacrosse now having a 4-0 record with a victory against Mount St. Dominic. And as today, the boys tennis team swept Eastside and took home a win as well. And I believe this might be still taking place in the auditorium, but we are doing the VHS royalty show, which we have these competing seniors for the quote unquote title of VHS royalty. But the biggest part of this, I believe, is just the fact that all these proceeds go towards this program that is headed by believe, the French teacher. And it's towards like building wells in Burkina Faso. And I think that's a very good initiative. And so prom sales have begun today and will continue through this April, sorry, this Thursday, April 10th. And tickets can be bought after school starting at 2:50 p.m. from Mr. Rosa and Miss Craven, which are the junior class advisors. And this Thursday, April 10th, is Jazz Night and is going to feature performances from the VHS jazz ensembles as well as student created groups. And it will take place here in the Learning Commons at 7 p.m. And if you didn't see it last year, it was,
Outrageous. It
yes,
was
it was
amazing.
phenomenal. Yes.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend
Yeah.
everyone.
If you can make it, it was
Yes.
very much worth it.
Yes. And then last Friday, we had the Triad Music Honor Society karaoke night with a bunch of students participating in singing an array of songs, whether it was from SpongeBob or from any musical whatsoever. So, and last Wednesday was also the drama and choral department trip to Broadway with the students had participated in a choral workshop with the musicians and choreographers behind Broadway musicals. It was a quite interesting experience. And at the end of the day, everyone went together and viewed the Broadway show Moulin Rouge. And this last Sunday, the Model UN Club competed at Newark Academy, where 3 students took home awards and achievements. And the Italian Club had recently held its annual bocce tournament. So this upcoming Friday is, of course, the Spring Pep Rally. And I'm just gonna speak lightly on this because I feel like I already have a lot of stuff that's colliding with the athletics report already, but I just want to talk about we had Chris Herron give the student body a presentation regarding substance abuse, and I think that was actually, I think saying that was like impactful and phenomenal was like a little bit of understatement, as like especially like he also voiced this that like if for the eyes of a student, like you go into these things, like you looking at them, it's like you're a little skeptical, like what can they really bring to the table? And I feel like he did a lot. It was very captivating, and I think it's was generally extremely beneficial. Also to hear like the response, and I think a lot of people were actually shocked at like the level of presentation that was given, and I think that was like the message definitely stayed, and I think that was just, you know, cheers to success, I guess. All right, that'd be all. Thank you.
That was a great report, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. That was great. And I do have to say, I concur with the Chris Herron. I went to the evening talk, and it was different than the afternoon talk, he said, but it was very impactful. And so I think that was, thank you to BMAC and everyone who helped bring him here. So moving on to committee reports, athletic committee.
Sure, we met, and thank you, Ryan, for captivating all the sports. Sports is going well, even though it feels like it's winter instead of spring weather. But all our teams are out there doing well. We discussed again, we always have it on our agenda for the turf, just to always keep that in mind, coming down the road, that will have to be replaced. Spring Leadership Summit took place at West Essex High School, where 17 students attended. The speaker was Seton Hall University women's basketball coaching staff and some of our players. It was they were well received. We also discussed girls wrestling and girls golf. We have, I believe, 2 girls right now on the wrestling team and 12 girls on our golf program. So looking to maybe eventually get a female, I don't know if we could afford a coach, but something to assist the male coaches with the wrestling and golf programs. And signing day started on today, April 8th, with our new backdrop I saw, which looks really nice. Board policy, I got cut off on I dropped somehow on our call for the spectator, but that's on for tonight. And also about the Chris Herron presentation, again, everyone that was involved in getting him here, VMAC, Ann Jocelyn, Laura Pomerese, Charlie Miller, Diane Giuseppe, everyone that was involved to bring him to Verona. His message was incredible. The afternoon presentation, you could hear a pin drop with the 700 students in the auditorium. That's how captivating he was. And again, in the evening, he just was very moving to hear his story and how he could relate to so many people. So even if there's just one person and that was in that audience that he was able to touch, it was well worth it. So I'm very happy that we had him here in Verona. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment, but since there is no one in the audience, we will skip over that for today. And then on to discussion items. Does anyone have any old or new business they wish to discuss?
I just wanted to also congratulate HBW for students for the play,
Yes.
for the music
Oh,
band.
so cute. It was
Um,
great.
They had
So
to-
great.
They had to divide, they had so many kids.
Yeah, they divide 'em
participating,
now,
right?
yeah.
Man, they have two different,
Yeah.
so that was,
2 years.
Really happy they do that.
that was great.
Yeah.
They were great. So congratulations to all those students
Thank you.
and the staff.
It was a lot of hard work, but it was well worth it.
Yeah, it's so cute.
Yeah, we have some talent too down there. So, and then moving on to correspondence, any correspondence? No correspondence, cool. And then on to agenda action items. Can I please get a motion for items A1 through A6?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Boone,
I'll second that.
second by Ms. Prisco. Any discussion?
Just one real quick. I want to congratulate Mrs. Albano on a very successful run. I know Mrs. Albano and her husband Frank had a very deep impact on our family, and I just want to take a moment and wish them all the best in the next steps of their lives.
Agree,
Great,
agree.
yes.
Congratulations to her.
Thank you. Okay, and if we can just have roll call?
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes,
Mr. Boone,
Yes.
motion carries.
thank you. And then moving on to education, if I can get a motion for B1 through B8.
I'll move it.
I'll
Moved by
second.
Mr. Baca, second by Ms. Prisco. Any discussions? Seeing none, if we can have roll call, please.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
yes.
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes,
Mr. Boone,
Yes.
motion carries.
there's nothing under athletics or facilities, so moving on to finance. Can I get a motion for E1?
So moved.
I'll second.
Hearing none, can we just have roll call?
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes.
Mr. Boone,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. And then moving on to governance and policy, can I get a motion for F1 and F2?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Boone,
second.
second by Ms. Prisco. Any discussion? No, okay, hearing none. Can I please have roll call?
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes,
Mr. Boone,
Yes. Yes.
motion carries.
still no members of the audience, so we will now move on to
Jim, how come I always vote first? Why is that?
because of where you sit.
Like 4 years. I'm happy to vote first, but it's been like 4 years and no one's ever
You
given me
want
an
to
ex-
switch it up? We can
No,
switch
I'm not suggesting that we switch. Is there a reason? I'd like to figure it out.
just the.
So you have the power to determine what the order is? Now I know, it's all.
If you want to, we can move you around.
My
Maybe
resolution is we
that's-
keep it as is.
And-
I'm happy with Jorge having the power. I just didn't know.
We just like you sharing this, a table.
If you want to enter no executive, I can give you legal advice. I'm just a reader. I'm happy. I think you did a great job, Jorge.
So Mr. Galvin to get back to me on Mr. Boone's question. April 28th for grades, students, parents with students in grades 6 through 8. And April 30th for parents in grade 5. Parents with students in grade 5. Yes, students entering, yes, yes, yeah. So it's so April 28th for parents of rising students in grades 6 through 8 and April 30th for rising 5th grade parents.
Board president. That's a good.
Oh, moved.
Moved by Ms. Prisco.
Second.
Sure. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Seconded by Mr. Walker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The next board meeting will be held on Tuesday, April 29th. High School Learning Commons. Everyone have a lovely evening.
Thank you.